All right, so we're diving into some seriously dark territory today. The name Pedro Alonso López, ever heard of him? The monster of the Andes. Yikes. Even just saying it out loud kind of sends chills down your spine, right?
No kidding. This guy's story, it's the kind that sticks with you. It makes you wonder what pushes someone that far.
Exactly.
Mm.
And what makes this even more disturbing is that he might still be out there.
Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a potential 300 victims, young girls. And Dr. Anibal Navarro Escobar, he's a forensic pathologist, super specialized in serial killers. Well, he points out that Lopez just disappeared. No confirmation of death, nothing.
So he could be out there somewhere going about his life like nothing happened.
Exactly, and that's what makes this whole thing so unsettling. So in this deep dive, we're really going to try and unpack this. We're going to dig into the video we found, the one with Dr. Navarro, and try to piece together what made Lopez who he was, what drove him to commit these horrendous acts.
So we're looking at his life, his crimes, and this unsettling disappearance. Like, how does someone just vanish off the face of the earth after all of that?
Right. We're also going to look at the bigger picture of it. What are the factors that could create a monster like this? Are they born this way or are they made?
Like nature versus nurture, right. I mean, I remember reading somewhere that something like 1% of people have some psychopathic traits, but obviously most of them don't become serial killers.
Right. So it's complicated, but let's start at the beginning. Lopez was born in 1948, the seventh of 13 kids. Imagine that chaos. And get this, his dad was murdered before he was even born. Can you imagine the kind of impact that would have on a family?
Oh, absolutely. Especially the mom. Talk about starting life with a heavy burden.
Yeah. And from what we understand, his mom, she wasn't exactly mother of the year material.
Yeah, the video goes into some pretty disturbing details. She was physically abusive, beating him with sticks and brooms. Plus, she was constantly putting him down verbally. It's no wonder he turned out messed up.
And on top of that, she was, well, a prostitute. And they lived in this tiny room, just a curtain separating him from her clients.
So he saw and heard everything. God, that poor kid. No child should be exposed to that.
It's just horrifying. And then at 9 years old, things take an even darker turn.
Hmm?
Lopez, he tries to molest his younger sister.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And his mom, her reaction, she kicks him out. Just throws him out onto the streets at 9 years old.
That's crazy. It's hard to imagine just abandoning your child like that, no matter what they did.
It's awful. But the expert, he makes a really interesting point. He says, this behavior, it probably wasn't some sudden thing. It was likely learned behavior from watching his mother.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense in a really disturbing way. Like he was exposed to all this inappropriate behavior and he thought it was normal.
Yeah, exactly. But still, being thrown out at that age, it's another layer of trauma on top of everything else.
Yes.
So for the next 3 years, he's a street kid, just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And he's exposed to even more violence and abuse, including being sexually assaulted himself.
Just imagine 9 to 12 years old on the streets, fending for himself, facing constant danger. No wonder he was so messed up.
It's heartbreaking. Then, out of the blue, there's a sliver of hope. An American family in Bogota adopts him. For the first time in his life, he has stability, love, education. He starts going to school, things are looking up.
So like a chance at a normal life.
You'd think so, right? But then it all crashes down again. There's some incident with a teacher, not a lot of details in the video, but whatever happened, it was enough to send him running back to the streets.
Wow. So even after experiencing a good home, the pull of his past, his trauma, it was just too strong.
Yeah, it's really sad. And from there, he spirals downwards. He starts stealing cars, ends up in prison. And it's in prison, well, that's where things get truly terrifying.
I bet. Prison isn't exactly known for rehabilitating people.
You got that right. So while he's in prison, he kills 4 inmates.
4? What, like a prison riot or something?
Not exactly. These inmates, they were apparently abusing him, and he snapped. Killed them all.
Oh, wow. I mean, self-defense, right?
You'd think so. And the craziest part, he only gets 2 extra years added to his sentence. They ruled it as self-defense.
Seriously. 2 years for 4 lives.
Yeah. And here's the really scary part. It's like killing those guys. It awoke something in him. He realized he enjoyed it.
Ugh, that is chilling. It's like prison turned him into a monster instead of reforming him.
Exactly. He gets released in the 1970s, and that's when the murders really start. He specifically targets young girls, mostly between 8 and 12. And a lot of them indigenous.
Oh, man. So not only was he a killer, he was preying on the most vulnerable?
Yeah, it's sickening. And he started his killing spree in Peru.
Peru. Did they, like, know it was him right away?
Not really. Back then, there were so many kidnappings and human trafficking cases that girls disappearing, it wasn't as unusual as it is now, especially in more rural indigenous communities.
So basically, he was able to blend in with the chaos that was already happening.
Pretty much. But then there's this one incident. He tries to abduct this indigenous girl, and the community, they catch him. They were going to bury him alive.
Bury him alive. Geez, like vigilante justice.
Yeah, covered in honey, too. It was going to be a slow, horrible death.
I mean, I can't say I blame them, but...
I know, it's tough. But thankfully, this missionary, she was working with the community, and she convinced them to hand him over to the police instead.
Thank goodness for that. So did they lock him up?
Well, that's where the story gets murky. Some say they just dumped him at the border with Ecuador and told him never to come back. Others say they took him to the police, but the police, they didn't do anything because the victims were indigenous.
That's terrible. Just another example of how marginalized communities get ignored, even when it comes to something as serious as murder.
Exactly. So basically, he gets off scot-free, he goes to Ecuador, and guess what? He keeps killing.
Ugh. That doesn't surprise me, sadly. It seems like that's all he knew how to do at that point.
Yeah. Then in 1980, there's a landslide in this town, Ambato. They uncovered the bodies of 4 young girls.
Oh, my God.
It's horrific. Now, at this point, they don't automatically connect it to Lopez.
So he was still under the radar.
For a while, yeah.
Yeah.
But then he gets cocky. He tries to snatch this other girl in the marketplace, promises her candy and money, you know, classic predator stuff.
That's so creepy.
It is. But this girl, she's smart. She tells her mom, the mom screams for help, people chase him down, and boom, citizen's arrest.
It's amazing what people can do when they come together, you know?
Absolutely. So they finally got him. But when they take him to the police station, he just clams up, won't talk, acts kind of crazy.
Playing the insanity card, huh?
Yeah, could be. But then this military chaplain, he starts talking to Lopez, builds a rapport, gains his trust. And wouldn't you know it, Lopez spills. He confesses to everything.
The whole thing.
Well, almost. This is where it gets weird. He claims he had an accomplice, this guy named Patino. Says Patino was the one who really liked the killing and burying part. Lopez, he was just, you know, helping out.
Patino. Does that name ring any bells?
Nope. Never found any evidence of this guy. Most people think he made him up, just trying to shift the blame.
Yeah, I mean, come on, what are the chances?
Right. But anyway, despite the Patino story, Lopez leads the police to 53 bodies in Ecuador. Plus, he claims to have killed way more, like 300 total in Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia. Gave specific numbers for each country.
300? That's insane.
It is. Hard to know for sure the number's accurate, but even if it's half that, it's still horrific. So they put him on trial in Ecuador, convict him. He gets 16 years.
16 years. That seems way too light for all those murders.
I know, right? But get this, he ends up serving only 14. Good behavior.
You're kidding me. Good behavior, this guy.
Yep. And when they release him, you know what he says? He thanks God for giving him his freedom back. No remorse, nothing.
That's just unbelievable. The lack of accountability is astounding.
It's scary. And the video goes into some detail about his methods. Apparently, he'd strangle the girls with his bare hands, staring into their eyes as they died.
Oh, God, that's just, I can't even imagine.
And he liked to kill during the day because he was obsessed with watching the light fade from their eyes. And after they were dead, he would lie down next to their bodies.
Oh, that's sick. That's beyond sick. What kind of messed up mind even thinks like that?
I don't know. It's truly disturbing. This was all before DNA evidence was widely used, so they had to rely on his confessions to get the convictions.
So there's no way to know for sure if he killed even more?
Not really. There could be tons of unsolved cases out there that are his doing, but without any DNA to link him, it's impossible to know for sure.
That's a huge problem. I mean, how can you get justice for the victims if you can't even prove who the killer was?
Exactly. So he gets released in Ecuador. You'd think they'd be watching him like a hawk, right?
Yeah.
But almost immediately, he's arrested again because he wasn't supposed to be in Ecuador in the first place. They deport him back to Colombia.
Okay, so back to his home country. They were going to lock him up for good this time, right?
You'd hope so. And in Colombia, they actually had an old murder case against him. This girl, Flor Alba Sanchez Ospina, they think he killed her back in the 70s.
So they were finally going to hold him accountable for at least one of his crimes.
Not exactly. They put him on trial, and get this, they declare him legally insane.
What? Insane. But he confessed to all those murders.
No, it's wild. But the court decided he couldn't be held responsible because of his mental state at the time of the crime. So instead of prison, he gets sent to a psychiatric facility.
That makes no sense. How can someone who is clearly a danger to society be declared insane and just sent to a hospital?
It's really frustrating. And this is where the system fails again. He keeps asking for evaluations, saying he's cured. And in 1999, they actually release him.
Release him. Just like that.
Well, they had some conditions. He had to pay bail and check in with the authorities regularly. He paid the bail, but he never showed up for his check-ins.
So poof, he just disappeared.
Vanished.
Yeah.
The last time anyone saw him was when he went to visit his mother. He asked her for money, a copy of his ID, and then nothing,
It's like he just melted into thin air.
basically. And remember, this was before sophisticated tracking systems, facial recognition, all that stuff.
So it would have been pretty easy to just disappear back then, especially if you knew how to lay low.
Exactly. And that brings us to the big question. Did he just start killing again? There are at least 2 cases that fit his MO, both young girls. One in Cundinamarca in 2000 and another, a really disturbing one, in Tunja in 2012.
2012. So he would have been in his 60s by then.
Yeah, around 64.
Yeah.
But the details of this case, they're eerily similar. This girl, Andrea Marcela Garcia, they found her body stuffed in the suitcase, burned. They did this super thorough autopsy, like 12 hours long, found male DNA, but it didn't match any family members.
So it could have been him.
It's possible. The problem is, back when they arrested him, they never took his DNA. So there's no way to compare.
So we're left with this huge, terrifying question mark. Did he just pick up where he left off?
Exactly. And Dr. Navarro, he's pretty adamant about this. He says people like Lopez, they don't just change. They can be incredibly manipulative, appear totally normal, like wolves in sheep's clothing.
That's a scary thought. There could be a lot of people out there just like him, blending in, waiting to strike.
It's unsettling, to say the least. And it really makes you think about what creates these kinds of monsters. It's not just one thing, right? It's a whole mix of nature and nurture, societal factors, trauma, who knows what else.
And the scary thing is, even with all our fancy technology, it's still really difficult to catch these guys. The volume of evidence, the cost of analysis, it's all a huge challenge.
Yeah, plus you need specialized teams, people who understand these kinds of minds, who can connect the dots.
I mean, there's hope with new technology like AI and neural networks. They can analyze huge amounts of data and find patterns that humans might miss. That could be a game changer.
Absolutely. But for now, cases like Andrea Marcela's, they remain unsolved. And Pedro Alonso López, he's still out there somewhere, maybe. No one knows for sure.
And that's the truly disturbing part. We're left with this open wound, this uncertainty. This guy committed some of the most horrific acts imaginable, slipped through the cracks of the justice system multiple times, and now he's just gone.
It makes you wonder how many others are out there, just like him, hidden in plain sight. It's a question that's going to stick with me for a while.
Me too. And it makes you think, what can we do as a society to stop this from happening again? It's not an easy answer, but it's a question we all need to be asking.
Absolutely.